Coming up on Windows Weekly, I am in for Leo Laporte while he is on vacation. I talk with Paul Thurrott and Mary Jo Foley, first and foremost about Microsoft's earnings report. What went well, where did they miss, and everything in between. Plus, we talk about Android apps on Windows 11, which ends up being another miss. Mary Jo Foley goes hands-on with the Surface Duo 2. We round things out with Windows 11 chat, Windows 10 chat, a little bit about devs, and of course, Xbox Corner. It is all that plus more coming up on Windows Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust. This is Twit.
This is Windows Weekly, episode 748, recorded Wednesday, October 27th, 2021. The good kind of Asterisk. This episode of Windows Weekly is brought to you by Andela. Andela is a global talent network connecting innovative companies like yours with qualified technical talent so you have more time to focus on your core business. Visit andela.com/4-companies to schedule a complimentary consultation and receive a 2-week no-risk trial with their vetted technical talent. And by Udacity. Get the in-demand tech skills you need to advance your career. Visit udacity.com/twit and get 75% off any program with code TWIT75. Limited time offer. And by Bandwidth. Bandwidth understands the challenges enterprises face when migrating their communications to the cloud. That's why Bandwidth launched Duet for Microsoft Teams, the only complete solution for direct routing and Microsoft certified E911 available direct from a carrier, designed to simplify your migration to Teams direct routing. Request your proof of concept at bandwidth.com/WW. Hello and welcome to Windows Weekly. I am not Leo Laporte. I am Micah Sargent in for Leo Laporte, who is having a spooky vacation down in Mexico. But I am pleased to be here to talk to two of the most wonderful Windows watchers in the world. Welcome for another show this week. Paul Thurrott and Mary Jo Foley. Paul Thurrott of Thurrott.com. How you doing?
I am doing well. How are you?
I am doing peachy keen, and I hear you are reporting boots on the ground somewhere other than your typical location, yeah?
Yeah. Actually, I should tell you guys, I went to a Fnac today, and that's the French version of Best Buy, and they had a Google store in a store, which I thought was kind of cool. They didn't have the new phones, which I thought was kind of terrible. But they also had, there were Windows 11 ads everywhere, going up the escalator and everything. It was like it was better than going to a Best Buy, actually.
Nice. We are also joined by Mary Jo Foley of All About Microsoft, who is not reporting from Paris or the Best Buy of Paris. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Micah. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, it's nice to see you too. Just in time to talk about one of the most exciting topics that anyone ever talks about, earnings reports. Heck yeah.
You know what? We're going to make it exciting. We're going to make it fast and furious and fluid.
But doesn't anyone have any concerns about this stuff? These companies they're too big to grow this much.
I know.
What is going on?
Wild.
Yeah. What is going on?
Yeah, Microsoft Q1 for their fiscal 2022, just a mere $45.3 billion in revenues for the quarter. Nothing big.
Not shabby. Not too shabby.
And for me, a very interesting metric this quarter, they passed 20 billion in a single quarter for that infamous metric they created for themselves that used to be called the commercial cloud, but now they've rechristened as the Microsoft Cloud. So if you see Microsoft Cloud was over 20 billion for the first time ever.
Wait. Stop the presses.
That junk, the commercial
cloud.
So
I will admit to being distracted. I'm away. All right. I will admit I'm mailing things in. Right. I did not see that. And so the one thing I haven't done is gone through their post-earnings conference call transcript, which I usually do. So you're telling me that this fake business that does not exist and is not anything real has been rebranded. Okay.
Yes, I am telling you that.
just want to make sure. Okay.
Yes, I am telling you that. So for people who need a quick refresher, what is the thing that was called Commercial Cloud that is now called Microsoft Cloud? It's this bunch of things Microsoft put into a single bucket. So Azure's in there, Microsoft 365, Office 365, Dynamics 365, some of LinkedIn's commercial business is in there. Anything that's basically all cloud and not on premises, they threw this all into a bucket, stirred, and they called it the commercial cloud, now called Microsoft Cloud. And the reason they did that is so that you can't figure out how big Azure is. Also, so you can't really compare them to AWS or Google because it's a different set of things in their bucket from the other two.
God forbid it was
the reason
terrible
they
in any
say
way.
they did it is they say it's impossible to separate those things out, which also is a little bit true because a lot of those things that we just mentioned run on top of Azure. So you have to have Azure to have some of those things, at least.
Yeah, the other thing that I think goes along with that is Microsoft does have 3 core business units. We can talk about the revenues of each of those. It's kind of interesting how those have evolved over time because they used to be fairly even. You know, they used to all kind of land at about 11 billion in revenues a quarter, and now those numbers have all changed. But Microsoft 365, for example, is technically part of the productivity and business processes business, but parts of it are elsewhere, including Windows, for example, which is in more personal computing. So it's fair to say Microsoft, for reporting purposes, they have to have these business units, but there are bits and pieces that are around the company. But the part that holds Azure, Intelligent Cloud, is the biggest part of the company and is growing and is kind of distancing itself a little bit from the other two. 17 billion in revenues, 31% year-over-year growth. But productivity and business processes, the second biggest business. This is mostly Microsoft 365. I think the dynamic stuff, I believe, is in that part of the business. 15 billion, right? Up 22%. And more personal computing, which is kind of the part I care about the most, right? This is literally Windows, Surface, Xbox, right? My holy trinity of Microsoft products is the laggard, right? It's the smallest business now, 13.3 billion in revenues and up 12%. So smallest business, smallest growth, right? And it kind of shows you how Microsoft is evolving as a company.
Totally. There isn't a ton to say about this quarter because everything pretty much was firing on all cylinders, except for a couple notable things.
Yeah, my thing.
Biggest one,
the Trinity.
Surface is not doing that well this quarter. And so it's another one of these things. Here's what Microsoft says, and here's what might be going on, right? So Microsoft says the reason Surface revenues were down 17% compared to the year ago quarter is because it was a tough comparable. So I was trying to think, what did they have that they announced in Q1 that was a tough comparable?
Good luck finding anything.
I couldn't really find anything. And then they also say the ongoing component shortage is to blame and that they could sell more if they could make more.
Okay, so they're saying that they're sold out. They're trying to claim that there isn't enough supply. But before you answer the question, though,
we could build more.
Can you define a tough comparable for those of us who don't know business speak?
Well, it means, in other words, think about the year ago quarter. Did they release some bonanza product line that was just went out all out? And that means
tough to compare
this year. There was nothing last year. To be fair to Surface, though, they just did have this major product launch. They revved most of their major products. And so I think the current quarter we're in, the holiday quarter, that will be the thing to look at. If this quarter is not fantastic, there are serious issues with Surface because they released some great looking products.
They've already said in their looking forward statements, next quarter is not going to be good for Surface. They've already said that.
Then something's wrong, right?
Yep.
I mean, that's bad. That's bad news.
What are the thoughts there of what could be going on? Is it that just the Surface laptops, or Surface devices, I should say, are not of interest to folks? Is it that our mobile devices are filling those roles? I mean, why do we think that Surface in particular may not be doing well?
Yeah, so you got to take this apart a little bit. So what's doing really well is Windows. So Windows OEM growth for Microsoft this quarter was up 10%. That's huge, given that PCs didn't grow that much, right?
Let me add an asterisk to that, but it's the good kind of asterisk. That includes a negative because Microsoft is deferring Windows 11 related revenues. This quarter was actually much better than 10% growth.
Right.
But they're deferring revenues probably, I don't know, to the current quarter or the next quarter, whatever. Or maybe they're spreading it out. But it actually would have been closer to 20%, which is amazing because we'll talk about Intel later. I mean, PC sales did not grow dramatically. They grew barely at all, in fact, in the quarter. But I'm guessing this is actually commercial PC related, commercial.
It is.
Growth, I would imagine.
They said that. Right. So they get more money per device if they sell you commercial Windows than if they sell consumer Windows, right? And so the reason the OEM number is up is because they're selling a lot of business PC they're selling Windows to a lot of companies making business PCs, and they're selling a lot of them. So that goes back to the Surface question. Why is Surface revenue going to be down again next quarter? And their answer is component shortages.
That's affecting everybody, right? I mean, that's
but there is also an asterisk. Let's use another asterisk. This one is if you're a big PC maker and there's a shortage of stuff, the people who buy the most are at the front of the line to get the stuff, right? Like, Dell, HP, Lenovo. If somebody's making chips, they're going to get them first. The smaller PC makers, which includes Microsoft, will be further back in the line. So if they only have X number of chips, the people who are going to get them are the established PC makers, not the smaller PC makers, right? So there is
you're right. By the way, she's 100% right. That's absolutely true. I mean, Microsoft in the PC space is like Google in the phone space. You may like or love the products or hate them or whatever, but I mean, I happen to think they're good, but in both cases, but they are kind of boutique hardware makers in those markets. It's just for some reason, even though they make the platform, they're just not a big deal. And I don't know why Surface does or doesn't resonate more with consumers or customers, whatever. But if you look at what they just announced, right, the Surface Laptop Studio, the Surface Pro 8, et cetera, I mean, the new product line, I mean, I would be shocked. Well, you already said they won't happen. So I'm surprised those aren't doing better. You know, Surface Pro 8 in particular is the one Surface product that's all out just successful. And this is the upgrade that we've been asking for what, 4 or 5 years now, you know. Bigger screen, Thunderbolt, you know, God forbid. So there's been a lot of positive movement there, and you know, I guess we'll see. But it's too bad because I feel like they're in a good place from a product mix perspective.
Yeah, I saw some people saying, well, the reason they're not selling is nobody wants them to make that. I'm like, no, that's not the reason. Like, people have choices, right? Like, that's the thing about Windows. People have choices. So,
I think people are upset that they added Thunderbolt ports. You know, I think that was the differentiator.
Right. So I just found the exact quote. The exact quote, what Amy Hood, the CFO, said yesterday in giving her outlook was, Surface revenues will decline in the single digits next quarter. And Windows OEM revenue growth will grow. Windows OEM revenue will grow the low to mid-teens. So Windows is still going to keep growing next quarter.
I mean, those two statements verify or support what you said earlier, which is basically that other PC makers are going to get those chips and they're going to sell PCs, and that's going to grow Windows. Which we've talked about this before. That if you had I hate to say that. I'm sorry. I apologize for the phrase, but this is an internal Microsoft phrase from the past. The shooting the baby thing. If you have to choose, right, you choose Windows. I mean, Microsoft, if you had to choose, if only one of them can be successful, you always choose Windows because it's such a volume product. And, you know, that whatever the figure was, 13 million. I mean, a huge chunk of that is just Windows.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
This is interesting in terms of, I mean, as flashy and as sort of out there in your face that the whole Surface lineup is, you know, they are really seemingly excited about all of this hardware. But if it doesn't do well and continue, I mean, have they had years where Surface did very, very well? Or I should say not even years, but different quarters where Surface did really, really well, or does it continue to just be kind of a disappointing.
Like once again, we will give you the horrible introduction to Microsoft financial disclosures. Some quarters they give you data, and some quarters they don't, and they do this purposely so you can't compare, quarter to quarter, year over year. So, for example, we know that in certain years past, Surface at one point hit the $1 billion mark in revenues, not profits or whatever, but in revenue. Yeah. So it's $1 billion business. More recently, they've had quarters where it was 1.5, and I don't know if it ever exceeded 2, but it has hit close to 2 billion in revenues.
Yeah.
So that's the level of that business. It's sort of like, if Google sells 7 billion pixels next year, it's a huge success over what they've done in the past. Apple and Samsung sell 30 to 80 billion, million, sorry. Billion? No, billion. Billion? Billion. No, billion sounds like a lot. Million. They sell a million, sorry. Dramatically, they sell a lot more every quarter, So it's sort of in relation to everything else that's going on in the world. I mean, wherever we are with PCs in a year, 250, 265, 285, whatever the number is, Microsoft is in the single digit millions. It's not a big part of it. Yeah. So it can still be, it can still be a profitable business. It can still be it will have some slice of revenues that, show up on the balance sheet or whatever, but is it successful compared to the top, 4 or 5 PC makers? No, it's not in that league.
We don't even know if Surface is profitable, right? Which probably means it's not.
That's exactly right. Right.
Yeah.
Because they would, would they trumpet
Microsoft, that? Yeah. I asked Microsoft that about LinkedIn yesterday because they were talking about how much the LinkedIn revenues are up this quarter. And I'm like, but it's not profitable, right? And the person I asked said, I don't think we've disclosed that. And I said, so that means no, right?
Well, and this is, look, anything we talk about today, the Office stuff is like this, Xbox is like this. It's really hard to draw comparables because of the way Microsoft reports things.
Right. And it's going to get worse, Paul. I hate to tell you. If you look at, they didn't just redefine commercial cloud. There's a whole bunch of new metrics they're moving around and things they're going to report as percentages going forward, not dollars. So yeah, it's going to get worse.
Fantastic. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. No, this has gotten bigger and bigger every year.
It
is.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I know. You're not going to believe I'm going to ask this question right now, but what about Xbox? Because I think, I think hardware did well this quarter, but but that
doesn't mean anything.
Didn't? Is that right?
Right. So that's exactly right. So hardware revenue grew 166% year over year. Yeah. That sounds amazing. Right. But you got to remember what the year ago quarter looked like. That was the last quarter before Microsoft launched a new generation of Xbox hardware. Nobody was buying Xboxes in that quarter. Right. So this is that year-over-year comparable thing again, except now we're going to use it. It kind of goes in the opposite direction. So last year, nobody was buying Xbox hardware. This year, component shortages. This could have been, 1,066% if they could get the components, perhaps. But they can't. So the Xbox Series X and S today they literally are selling every version they can put into the market. You can't find them sitting on a shelf. That's not a thing. But they also can't make enough to make it matter. So yes, that's true. There was a rumor, I'll call it a rumor. There was a story sometime in the past 30 days. I don't remember what publication had this, where they basically said Microsoft has completely missed its subscription revenue numbers, or I should say subscriber numbers, really, right? Which is the same thing.
Yeah. It was
meaning
Axios.
Xbox.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. So Axios reported then that Microsoft had some internal goal for Xbox Game Pass subscribers, and they didn't even come close to it. So that is one of the hard numbers Microsoft has been talking about lately. And by lately, I mean in the past year or so, because it's a new business and you can show huge growth. And there were hard numbers about how many subscribers they had. They were very proud of that. And that's something they've wanted to talk about. And it's a little awkward heading into the holiday season to know that this has not, they've kind of hit a plateau. So Xbox content and services revenue was up 2%, which I'm going to call flat, frankly, because compared to a year ago, Xbox Game Pass sort of didn't exist at that, or I should say Xbox cloud gaming didn't exist.
Right. I found the number if you're interested. It's that they found Microsoft every year around this time, they put out a lot of documentation because they're coming up to year end. So they put out like Satya Nadella's note to shareholders and the shareholder voting information for the upcoming meeting. Then they put out this document for executive compensation that explains why they paid each of the top officers what they paid them. So the way they do that in part is they say, did you meet your targets? So the target for Xbox Game Pass subscriber growth was 48%. But for the 12 months into June 30th, it was actually 37. So they missed it by about 10 percentage points, right? The other number that's off, by the way, and when you look at those numbers, is Teams, which is just unfathomable to me. I'm like, really? But you know what? Teams has been growing so fast and so hard. You've got to kind of wonder if they haven't almost saturated the available number of people who are going to go to Teams right now, not forever, but like at this point, right?
They're relying on consumers, Mary Jo. That's why.
Yeah, now they are, right? So that's what, if we keep asking, why are they pushing this consumer thing so hard? That's one reason, right? It's like,
you got to get it from somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Azure is another one of those things. Azure was growing in the 70+%, quarter over quarter, or year over year, I should say, for several quarters in a row. It was huge. And I think this past quarter it was 50%, which, by the way, Azure has been around for 15 years, or what's the number? It's 20? Not a brand new. 20? Yeah, 20. It could be 20. This is not brand new, right? So for a product like that to have that kind of growth for so long is just extraordinary. Right. Naturally, it has to slow down at some point. 50% growth. That's insane. That's still insane. Right. That would be celebrated by any company.
Yeah.
So I think Xbox and Surface fall into the same basic category, which is that I look at it hopefully semi-objectively, and I think this is the right mix of things for the marketplace. It seems like the right products and services in both cases, and both are not necessarily resonating in the same way, although or as much as I think they would. But Xbox Series X and X, for sure, this thing would be 2, 3, whatever times bigger than it is if they could just get the parts. There's no doubt about it.
Right.
Yeah, this one I believe, not so much with the one we had before, where it's like if there were more Surface devices that we'd be able to, but certainly with Xbox.
That one I'm not. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, we're going to later on in the show, we're going to talk about them and prices of Surfaces in the context of another story. So that also figures in here, I think.
That's right. Yeah, right. You have an interesting forward-leaning kind of Surface thing coming up. I don't know what to say. Is there anything Office interesting in this quarter worth
not really
discussing?
No.
Yeah.
Though, the number that's the number that's down, but you would expect it to be down, is people buying on-premises, perpetual versions of Office. Because people instead are subscribing to Office 365 and Microsoft 365. That's not a surprise, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, their enterprise mobility stuff is actually huge. 30% growth, is insane. It's only 100. It only is 196 million seats, right?
Yeah. So one number that people are very surprised about, and they didn't really talk about it a lot that I heard, is they're still selling so much on-premises Windows Server, SQL Server, all their enterprise servers. They're still selling a lot on-premises. And, this is the whole hybrid idea. You can have some running inside your company and then connect up to the cloud, or have them in a mixed environment with Azure Arc, managing all of them. They kind of glossed over that, but I'm like, that business is still huge for Microsoft, on-premises Windows Server.
Well, of course they glossed over it. Nobody wants to hear about legacy products selling well.
I know, right?
I mean, Microsoft is just
we'll
cloud,
take the money,
cloud.
Right?
Well, look at the Satya Nadella quote. Literally, it talks about this.
Know.
Digital, whatever. Let me get to the cut to the chase. The Microsoft Cloud delivers the end-to-end platforms. He literally said tech intensity. That's right. This is the product. Yeah, we have the productivity and affordability products and services by building tech intensity, right? The end-to-end platforms and tools that organizations need to navigate this time of transitions and change. Transition and change is not on-prem Office. It's not on-prem server. It's not, they don't want to talk about that stuff. But the thing is, and by the way, if you look, you pay more attention to this than I do. Windows Server these days, I don't even know what this product is anymore. It has 6 discrete workloads now or something. Windows Server used to be like this Swiss Army knife of it did everything. And today it's very targeted at very specific workloads. It really doesn't do that much, comparably.
Yeah. I don't know. You're going to have some angry IT pros with that statement, but
well, I don't know. You know what? I would bet that there are IT pros that kind of wish that it was more like it used to be, where this thing was, just a menu of options that could do everything.
Yeah. The product that they're really pushing in that space now is Azure Stack HCI, that hyperconverged architecture thing.
Right.
Because their idea is you can have Windows Server, but connect it up to Azure so you have the best of both worlds. So that's kind of where they're trying to get people who are on Windows Server now. They're like, okay, if you don't want to go all the way to 100% cloud, do the interim step. Or as I've called it publicly, and Microsoft was not thrilled, I called Azure Stack HCI the gateway drug to the cloud. They're like, Mary Jo, could you just not use that one? That's not the best.
It's like a machine that pumps a cloud into your data center.
Exactly. Look at that.
Why is it so foggy in here?
That's a good explanation. Yeah. What's all this smoke? Oh, it's the cloud.
That's the cloud.
Yeah. Yeah, but otherwise, on earnings, there was nothing that I was stunned or surprised. I was like, yeah, they're emphasizing the cloud stuff. Cloud's going gangbusters, but they're still selling a lot of on-prem products, and they're not talking those up as much for obvious reasons, but they're still selling them. And Windows had a great quarter. So,
well, if you don't mind me asking, kind of just off the cuff here. Yeah. Windows Commercial includes products, which is Windows, right? It's the Windows licenses. Right. But they also specifically call out cloud services as part of those revenues. What exactly is a Windows Commercial cloud service?
I believe it's things like Windows 365, the cloud PC stuff, for one.
Okay, so it's like that portion of those revenues.
That kind of stuff. Yeah. Yep.
Okay. I feel like that's new language to me. And maybe it was last quarter. No, okay.
Yeah, it's been there, but they kind of just treat it as this bucket that they don't talk up a lot. I think consulting services revenues may be in there. You know how Microsoft has a big consulting business that they don't like to talk about because it competes with their partners. But I think some of that is in that bucket also.
They have psychiatric services for people who've upgraded to Windows 11 and need some counseling.
Exactly. The doctor is in. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah, it's going to be okay. I know you can't right click and do anything. You'll be okay.
Yeah. So I think we're good with earnings, at least Microsoft earnings. You may want to talk about other companies' earnings, but
just super quickly.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, just super quickly, because it's interesting that in the same time period, Intel reported its earnings. So Intel historically, well, maybe I shouldn't say it that way, but Intel recently, we'll say, has been kind of 2/3 revenues from PC business and 1/3 from data center. And that's been shifting. So, we'll see how that changes in the future. Intel's revenues from PCs overall only were down 2%. And they're selling more of the more expensive PCs. They've just launched the next generation, the 12th gen core chipset. They're starting with the desktop, which is traditional. We'll probably at CES find out about 12th gen for laptops. Lower volumes from notebooks, that should be scary to anybody. Like that's scary. And that's why the Microsoft numbers are so interesting. And that's why I asked, because a lot of their revenues come from more of the commercial side, it looks like, in particularly this quarter. And hopefully in the current quarter, which is a holiday quarter, we'll see some movement there. But I mean, Intel is in a weird transitionary state right now, as we all know. And I'm sure they'll get off, 14 nanometer any day now. But they're having some problems with that kind of stuff. So I thought that was interesting. But then just as a comparable to, Microsoft, and this is something we've been talking about a lot recently, Google announced revenues. Now, granted, Alphabet, Google. 89% of Google's revenues came from advertising. Yikes. $65 billion in revenues. 19 billion in net income. That's almost half again as big as Microsoft. That's incredible. But they grew 39% year over year. That's even bigger than Microsoft as far as growth. I mean, that's astonishing. And you would think in this day and age,
sorry to interrupt you. Want to hear a weird comparison thing? So 89% of Google's revenues are ads, like you just said. The other part is heavily their cloud business, right? Like, so it's Google Cloud, it's all the Google Workspace stuff. And basically, if you're comparing the three big cloud vendors, Microsoft, Google, and AWS, Microsoft and Google are the most alike in terms of the mix. But Dina Bass from Bloomberg tweeted yesterday, so Microsoft's revenues from cloud are 4 times Google's revenues from the cloud.
By the way, but Microsoft's revenues from intelligent cloud are 4 times. Just intelligent cloud. Intelligent cloud, off the top of my head, I think it was 19 billion in revenues. Google Cloud was 5 billion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's incredible.
I know.
Right? Now,
really
there are other bits of, you said 4 times, right? 4 or 5?
4 times, yeah.
4 times, yeah. So that must be that number. I think that's where that came from. But, if you look at their other business units, chunks of those are cloud-based. I mean, you could make an argument that Microsoft's cloud-based revenues might be 6-7 times. Google almost doesn't rate. Obviously there's Amazon, big number one with a bullet on it, and then Microsoft, and then Google's kind of the, they're there, and you would assume that Google would be the, I mean, if you want to argue that their advertising is delivered over the cloud, we have a different conversation then. But it's interesting that, pure cloud revenue, like productivity cloud stuff, they're actually not that big.
It's not a big business for them. And everyone always thinks like, oh, they're killing it and they're killing all the other competition. I'm like, but in terms of revenues, they're not.
It's less than 10% of the revenues.
Right.
It's incredible. So anyway, Google, if you were to look at the world's biggest companies, I don't believe Google is bigger than Microsoft, but their revenues consistently have been much bigger than Microsoft's over the past several quarters. And I'm thinking that might have to change.
Well, if the legislators have their say in each
I don't know if you've been following the regulatory stuff, but a lot of people are looking at Google these days. So that's true.
Yeah.
All right. We do have some more interesting stuff to talk about, including Android on Windows 11, but we do need to take a quick break so I can tell you about Andela. I'm super pumped about us partnering with Andela here. They're bringing you this episode of Windows Weekly. It's a global talent network with a mission to connect brilliance with opportunity. Your company is expected to move faster than ever before to stay ahead of the competition. And with so many priorities to manage, how are you supposed to find the time to both build and onboard an amazing engineering team that will get you to where you need to go? Well, this is where Andela can help. Andela is the world's first talent network connecting innovative companies like yours with top-tier vetted engineers so you have more time to focus on your core business. You may be asking, why Andela? Well, Andela is committed to your success. With their combination of expert technical recruiters and proprietary matching algorithms, they connect you with developers who are the best in the business, enabling you to accelerate productivity, drive revenue, and scale your business. In fact, Andela offers rigorous vetting processes. Their hiring process is quick and efficient while also maintaining the highest quality admission standards to ensure they can place you with top quality engineers at scale. Global talent at your fingertips. This is very cool. In today's hyper-competitive hiring environment, companies that limit themselves to local hires, well, they're at a severe disadvantage. With Andela, you can tap into their pool of highly qualified talent from around the world and cut your hiring timelines down from months to days. You also get efficient ramp-up times. Andela understands that companies are expected to do more with less and consistently justify ROI. When you hire Andela engineers, you can expect that they'll be efficiently onboarded and ready to deliver value for your team within days. And also embedded team members. Andela engineers are not just part-time support, but rather fully embedded into your organization with at least 5 hours of overlapping working hours with the rest of the engineering team. Mindshare partnered with Andela to quickly hire 10 new digital experts, including data scientists, machine learning specialists, analysts, and software developers. The executive director and head of business intelligence at Mindshare says, as we continue to enhance the Synapse platform, time to value is very important. Andela is a good partner in helping us identify the right talent that is fit for different purposes. So, tap into a wider talent pool and stop competing with major tech companies. Plus, spend less time interviewing. Brilliance is evenly distributed, but opportunity isn't. So visit Andela.com/4-companies to schedule a complimentary consultation and receive a 2-week no-risk trial with their vetted technical talent. That's Andela.com/4-companies. Thanks so much to Andela for sponsoring this week's episode of Windows Weekly. Alrighty, folks, it's time to talk about Android apps on Windows 11. Oh,
we skipped one.
Oh, no.
So Microsoft has a new employee count, which is kind of interesting.
It is. Right. This is a really good post from GeekWire that looked at some of the Microsoft numbers. Microsoft now has nearly 190,000 employees. They grew 23,500 people just in the past year. And almost all of those, well, I can't say almost all, the vast majority of those were overseas hires, not in Redmond.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah. So this is, given all the things about talent pool shortages and people quitting and changing jobs, this is a pretty astounding number that they could find this many people to hire, and they hired them. Todd Bishop, who wrote this, said, the last time Microsoft had a big bump like this in hiring was when they bought Nokia, and they added 25,000 people and then ended up firing almost all of them. But yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So interestingly, 190,000 employees. Google also reported this quarter how many employees they have. I don't know, maybe they do that every quarter, but they hit 150,000 employees. They had 132,000 a year ago. So they also grew 20 something thousand, but I guess 28,000, whatever. Or I can't do simple math. 18,000. let's call it 20,000. So it's interesting where they're at. And I bet both companies, I don't know for Google, I can't say, but I wouldn't be surprised to discover that they too, a lot of those employees are not in California, Mountain View or whatever. They're, all over the world. And probably a lot of them are remote.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So if you don't mind,
a lot of employees.
I know we have some Android stuff. I want to hear about Surface Duo too.
You do?
I do.
Okay. So I got the Surface Duo 2 last Thursday, I believe. Here it is.
And that is a white. Is that, what do you call it? Platinum?
This is Glacier. Also known as
my
white.
Goodness. Do you feel just so productive with that hinge? Doesn't it just make you
look more productive as holding it?
I bet it's lappable. It's easily lappable.
Trying to show you how much the camera bump stands up. Yeah. Here's the camera bump. So when you fold it over, this is what it looks like with the camera bump. Gives it a little space.
It's like a bookmark in a book.
Enjoy.
No, not enjoyable. But not as horrible as I thought. Also, like everyone's like, "Oh, that camera bump thing's gonna be terrible, right?" And it's not that annoying. It's got a really beautiful screen. The camera is really great. But when I reviewed the Surface Duo 1, I mean, it's not as great as like the Google cameras, but compared to the camera that was in it before, it's vastly improved. Problem with the camera is you have to hold your phone like this to take a picture, right?
Yeah, right.
You can't take it the normal way. So it's a little cumbersome and you have to figure out how to press the camera button while you're holding the phone that way. A little weird. I hate the gestures. I'm so hateful on the gestures. I shut off Android gestures, but they're still there. I hate the gestures so much. Right. Yeah, I don't like it. Trying to get away from the screen so I can show you the screens. But I I've got to spend a lot more time with it to see if they fix the software, because when I reviewed the Duo 1, my biggest problem wasn't the hardware. The hardware is beautiful. I mean, it's awesome. And they've made the hinge even tighter. You're going to be able to display notifications, a little like kind of like glow-in-the-dark icons here, so you can see, oh, I have a notification on Twitter. I have a notification on Microsoft Mail here. So that you don't have to actually, they had that feature in the old one, peek. You had to actually open your phone. What good is that, right? But here's the screen, if you can see this.
Yeah, so you got notifications on the other screen, which is kind of neat.
Yeah.
It just turned off, unfortunately. But
I'm like, there. Yeah.
So this is still kind of like Microsoft Launcher style. It's like the Microsoft, their own kind of Android or whatever.
Yeah, it is kind of like that. Again, I need to try running apps side by side. I wasn't a big believer in that making me more productive last year, but I'm going to give it a chance. I have 60 days till I have to return this, so I'm definitely going to try it out. It's a super cool device. It's really nice, but I need a reason for it. I already get I'm getting the Pixel Pro 6. It's coming Monday. Not that I'm that excited.
You have to think the Pixel Pro 6 is going to make you forget all about this thing. Yeah. This is the problem. Yeah.
I know. Yeah. I guess I like that they're experimenting still. I feel like this is truly a Generation 2 device so far from my very, very limited testing of it. And, what they always say is Microsoft doesn't make a good device till it's in the 3rd generation. I have a feeling that's going to be true of this. But I'm still doing a wait and see. I'll give you more details as I use it more.
Clearly improved, at least.
Definitely improved over the first version. A lot of people who have review units kind of had that as their observation. It's like, hey, they really fixed a lot of things, not just the camera, but it's still not something I'd pay $1,500 for, because why?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, how are you using it? Have you put your SIM card in it? Are you trying to give it the old college try?
I'm going to. Yeah. I have a SIM in it that's not my regular SIM right now, but I need to put my own SIM in it and try to make it my, daily driver. Mm-hmm. It's just hard because I can do everything so much faster and better and more efficiently on a single screen, because that's just how that's how I use a phone, right?
Right.
It's just hard to make yourself think about, okay, dual screen, because you don't use it the same way you use like a clamshell laptop because of the size, right? But you also don't use it the same way you use a phone. So
yeah, it's some weird
the camera
in
is way
between.
better. The Grey Wolf 123 in the Discord is saying that it's so much better camera. It is. I still notice a lag in the camera, but again, I haven't tweaked all the settings. He's saying the camera's snappier. I took a really quick picture of Sriracha with it, and it was good, but like my Google Pixel 3 XL takes a better picture. Mm-hmm. And that's an old phone, right? So.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm encouraged that they've made improvements. I'm discouraged that they haven't made more improvements, but
what things would you like to see? What
how about
would
a bumper that evens out that bump?
That would be nice.
So I have the bumper, but I don't want to attach the bumper because then I won't be able to return it. Because when you put the bumper on, it's got like sticky stuff that holds it onto the phone, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the other thing then. If you want to return it, you have to be very careful with it. So making it your daily driver would be kind of difficult.
Right. Like I said, I'm gonna try it. I have a feeling I'm not going to try it a lot. I just mostly wanted to see how much they had improved it.
Sure.
They have definitely improved it. It's much better than the first version. Grey Wolf saying the OS is snappier. It is. Although I hate the gestures. Despise. I hate Android gestures. The first thing I do is I make sure I never use them. Like, horrible.
Have you? Oh, really? So you mean Android? So have you upgraded to Android 12 on your Pixel 3?
No,
XL?
I have not.
You haven't, and you don't use gesture navigation.
No, I hate gestures.
Oh, Mary Jo, we gotta have a talk someday.
No, come on. Back button, home button, guys. This is how the deities meant us to use phones.
Wow. Well, unfortunately, it's kind of going this direction.
I know. I hope they let me keep turning them off because I don't like them. I'm also somebody who doesn't use what do you call it? The swipe typing on keyboards.
Oh God, I hate swipe typing.
You do? Good. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good.
We're there. I'm with you there.
I can't type anyway. It doesn't matter. I have to use my voice. I can't type to save my life.
Yeah.
I was just told my wife this week, like I am resigned that this is never happening. Like we're how many years in are you? I mean, I got an iPhone in 2007. It's not happening. let's just agree. This is passing me by. I can't. It's just not happening.
You just mean mobile
I
typing,
haven't figured it out yet. It's just not. It's not happening. It's just we're done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how fast I type on a computer, but it's really fast. On a mouse, I look like one of those people that doesn't know where the keys are. Like I can't, or the phone rather. I just can't do it.
Yeah. So more to come. I'm going to do a real review. Like I do these mini non-reviewers reviews, as I call them, like normal people reviews. Yeah. So I will do one.
And that's why I think your opinion about this is valuable, right? Because they're going to like whoever that person is in the forum there, not to, and I'm not making fun of them or criticizing them, but technical people who can do this and want to go in this direction. I'm glad that it works for them, but it's more interesting to me how this impacts the normal. You've been using Android for years. You're used to it. I mean, is this better, worse, whatever? And I think that viewpoint is very important.
Yeah, I'm happy to share it. I just need more time.
Right. Good. Okay.
Very well. We shall give you more time, as much as you need. Well,
thanks.
I guess 60 days.
60. You have 60 days, Mary Jo. The clock is ticking.
Yep. It is.
That's a lot of time, though. That's pretty good.
It is. I know. It's nice.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Anything else in the
So let's go back to the other Android story, which is last Wednesday. I'm gonna have it seems like a million years ago now, but I believe at that time, I think we talked about this last week. Microsoft on Wednesday now I'm remembering. They announced a new build of Windows 11 for the beta channel, which is semi-controversial because it's not the most forward-leaning channel we have. The first availability of this Windows subsystem for Android. And I think the reason they did that was because the Walking Cat leaked it, and they felt like they had to come out with it. Now, the problem with that is that it wasn't ready. In fact, as of today, it's still kind of whatever. But and so thanks to a very technical friend of mine, Rafael Rivera, he was able to get me the bits I needed to get this thing up and running as close to possible or as quickly as possible to what Microsoft intended. Now, in the days since, I think if you are on the beta channel, you just get this now. It's there. But what I discovered, and what is true of the public bits, if you will, is that this is not a completely seamless experience. Now, granted, this is the first public release, and so it could get better over time. But if you go back to last June, when Microsoft was talking about Android apps on Windows 11, one of the things they were saying was that you could go to the Windows Store, you could browse for apps. You wouldn't care if those apps were web apps, Windows apps, store apps, Android apps, whatever. You would just install them from the store and they would run, and these things would all run side by side. And that is not how this works at all. So in order to get an Android app on Windows 11, you have to first install the Amazon App Store for Android, which is a Windows 11 app, which actually that's not even true. It's an app. It's a standalone app. As it turns out, that thing is actually an Android app. So as part of that install, you have to meet all these prerequisites. You have to have Hyper-V or the virtualization components installed. You have to have virtualization capabilities enabled in your firmware if you have an Intel or AMD-based PC, or actually also a Qualcomm-based PC, I guess. There's a bunch of stuff you have to kind of do to make this work. And it's not a seamless experience. So this App Store is a standalone app. I would say 75 to 90% of the apps are just garbage game. They're stupid. It's horrible. Like the quality is terrible. There's only 3 to 7 maybe actual apps. And the only one to me that's any decent is the Kindle app, right? This is kind of the canonical, tablet app or whatever. I think there's a couple of airline apps. There's a flight tracker app. There's a couple of things, but most from an app perspective, there's just not a lot there yet, and that will change over time. That's fine. It's a lot of work, a lot of steps to get this thing going. And the way this works, and this is something you don't see with the Windows subsystem for Linux, for example. You have to manually start up an Android VM, a virtual machine, before any of this stuff works. Now, I shouldn't say manually. The act of running one of these apps will cause it to start. So if you run the App Store for Android, that will cause it to start. If you run one of the apps, that will cause it to start. It doesn't take a minute or anything for it to load, but it does take several seconds, and you see it, like you see the thing starting up. It's a very developer-like experience to me, and it's not at all seamless like Microsoft promised. Now, this could change over time, we'll see. But the dream here, the idea is you go to the Microsoft Store in Windows 11 or I guess it'll just be Windows 11, and you search for an app, and you're like, I want the Kindle app, or I want I think it's some app, Crazy Bird, or whatever it is, some app. And if that thing is available on Android through the Amazon store, it will appear in the listing. You'll click on it, you'll install it, you'll run it. It will just run next to other apps. It looks like an app. It's fine. And today, that is not quite the case. And of course, the other thing that's going on here is the Amazon App Store for Android. I mean, like, unless you're a Kindle, like Fire HD tablet user, you're not using this App Store, right? You're using the Google Play Store. And that is not available. Although people have already figured out how to sideload that. So maybe that's something. I'm away, right? So I can't look at that right now. But when I get home, that's one of the things I'm going to look at. Because honestly, what most people want is Gmail, Google Calendar, the Google apps especially, but also just the broader catalog of apps that are available in the Google Play Store. Now, the problem is Microsoft ostensibly is working with Amazon and with these third-party app developers to make sure that these apps work well in Windows in some way. And this is something that maybe Google has done some of this work with Chromebooks, right? They want the apps to kind of work with the mouse and keyboard. They want the apps to scale correctly if you full size them, that kind of thing. So I think there's been some work there with Amazon, and I'm sure, these things are better citizens on Windows as a result. But the experience right now, as it should be, it's pre-release, it's okay, is not particularly great. There's also a kind of it's not really that goofy, but there's an app, this kind of a files type app where you can browse the file system of this virtual machine, which is your Android install, which lets you copy files back and forth. I can't think of a huge reason that you might want to do this exactly quite yet, but it is, it's like when you attach an Android phone to your computer with a cable and you can browse the file system and download photos or whatever. That capability exists. It's there, and that's fine. But man, I think the most stunning problem that I've seen is just the quality of the apps. You would think, here's version 1. We only have 50 apps, right? These will be the 50 best apps. They have to be, right? They're not. They are the biggest collection of garbage I have ever seen outside of the Microsoft Store, right? Which is insane. They're terrible looking at. Well, they're mostly games, actually, is what they are. Yeah. It's really strange.
Did you see today that I saw this, Tom Warren wrote this up. There was an Italian design student who's managed to get the Google Play Store running on Windows 11.
Yes. Yes, exactly. So
in a very convoluted way, using Windows subsystem for Linux.
So the problem with that, actually,
will there be a day when this is officially supported? I don't know. Lately, with Microsoft and Google warring, I doubt it.
Right. That requires Google to say okay, right? So
right.
The third-party utility thing that makes this work could be cut off very easily by Microsoft and or Google.
Yeah.
But I will say this, I mean, Google has now, I don't know how far we're in, 2-3 years more of helping developers tailor Android apps to work well in Chromebooks, which, the same thing, they have the bigger screens and they can scale the apps correctly, all that kind of stuff. If you could get it to work, if it does work, if no one blocks it, there's no reason Windows users couldn't benefit from the work that Google has done to make those apps work better on bigger screens, right? So that literally is the dream.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll see. I'll look at that when I get home. But yeah, I read through it and I was like, this is.
Yeah.
Even
There's
the
a whole
official
YouTube video. Yeah, but I'm like, it's not for everyone.
Right. No.
No.
Anyway, that's where we're at. So I think as of today, I suspect, well, I'm not going to look, but I suspect if you went to the Windows Store today and you browsed for App Store for Android, in addition to all the garbage apps that the Microsoft Store would show you, hopefully you could get the Amazon thing and then you could start downloading apps. But the important thing, remember, I think it was September, there was an update for Windows 11 Store, and we had known since June that Android apps were coming, and they were coming via the Amazon App Store for Android. Yeah. They announced the Epic Game Store was coming, and they announced that the Amazon Retail Store was coming. And in both of those cases, those apps were going to be standalone apps. You downloaded them, you would run them separately from the Microsoft Store, and then you would do whatever you did with them from there. So if you would order stuff from Amazon, obviously, or you would download games or play or buy games from Epic, and then you could install them on your computer. But they weren't store-in-a-store experiences. Mm-hmm. Supposedly, the Amazon App Store is supposed to be a store-in-a-store experience, but as of today, it isn't. It's exactly what those other things are. It's a standalone app. You download it. You manage all the Android apps separately from there. And honestly, I think for this to make sense for normal consumers, it kind of has to be a store-in-a-store. It has to be, right? Like that's the thing that makes it make sense.
Right.
To me.
Well, now we know why they didn't manage to ship Android apps in time for Windows 11.
It's not even close.
Yeah. It's not ready.
Nope. Yeah. No, it's not ready at all. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, so we've got some time before we're going to be able to really use. I mean, do you expect a future in which it is just what I have on the new Google Pixel, the different apps that I have there? I could just get them on my Windows machine and be able to use them, or is it always going to be this sort of weird, kind of stunted, curated approach? Yeah.
So what you're really asking me is, do I believe that what Apple told us, or Microsoft told us originally, is going to happen, or do I believe that Microsoft, as usual, has communicated poorly, and what we're going to get is not what they promised originally, or what I thought they promised originally? And I got to tell you, I'm a little mixed on that one because there's kind of a rich history there of disappointment. So, I don't know. The thing we've been saying, I think Mary Jo agrees with this, is that Windows 11 1.0, we'll call it, is not the complete experience, obviously.
Yeah, right.
And hopefully by mid 2022, we'll have that. We'll have the full list of things that they promised last June. Will that full list of things they promised last June include a seamless store experience where you can download Android apps side by side with Windows and web apps and whatever else they offer? I hope so, right? Not for me. I mean, I can handle it, but I just think for normal people, that's what makes sense. And I hope that is what happens. Today, that is not what we're seeing.
You know what? I guess I always thought it would be you have to use the Amazon App Store to get those apps.
You took it that way.
I did. I took it that way. Yeah.
So the reason I didn't think so was because they referred to it as a store-in-a-store experience. And they and if you go back to I think it was in September. It would have been September. The announcement kind of differentiated how those other stores they announced
would be different. Yeah.
That's how I took it. I could be completely wrong. Yeah. I've certainly spent time looking it up. I expected to see a more definitive description of that in the June video, the original announcement. And honestly, I didn't find it. It was actually pretty vague. So
yeah. Amazon's press release on this when they first announced it was super vague. And then there was the thing about there being Intel Bridge, which only some people would need and other people wouldn't need it. So there was an Intel press release. I was like, there are a lot of moving parts to the whole getting Android apps to work.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So we'll see how it evolves.
Yep.
All right. Are we ready to move on to Windows? Well, more Windows 11.
Other Windows 11. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So did you see the news about the build today?
Yeah.
Mary Jo? And I haven't had time. Maybe, do you know anything about it? I don't even know what's new.
Right. There's not much new in today's build. It's a dev build. It's 22489. It has a new they're starting to very limitedly roll out this Your Microsoft Account settings page for Windows 11. Only a very small subset of dev build testers are going to get it, and then they'll add more testers and over. So that's the one, quote, big feature that's in this one. And then there's also some more... another setting that's part of DNS over HTTP, which is called designated resolvers. And there's a long explanation in the blog post about what that is and who will care about that. Other than that, sorry, Surachi. Other than that, we have mostly bug fixes and known issues and nothing else, pretty much. So, yeah.
So if you don't mind, I'd like to read from this post because, again, I haven't had a lot of time to kind of go through this and think about it. There's been a lot of questions about this Windows Feature Experience Pack thing.
Yeah.
And according to Microsoft, this Your Microsoft Account settings page, right, which basically the ability to manage your Microsoft account from within Windows 11, which is a great idea.
It
is something called an online service experience pack, right? And despite the fact that they've never really described what a Windows feature experience pack is, they say that this new online service experience pack works in a similar way to the Windows feature experience pack, allowing Microsoft to make updates to Windows outside of major OS updates. The difference between the two is that Windows feature experience packs deliver broad improvements across multiple areas of Windows, whereas the online service experience packs, this is crazy, are focused on delivering improvements for a specific experience. I don't know that they've ever explained what a Windows feature experience pack is.
No, barely.
Am I wrong?
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
I don't.
Barely.
Okay.
No, and then last week they had those servicing stack update things that they said, we don't have anything more to say other than what's in the blog post. I'm like, so they didn't explain that either. And that's another updating mechanism that's being added to Windows 11. I'm like, okay, so there's so many different moving parts here again with how you can possibly get features and updates and all the different ways in combination beyond just Windows Update, obviously, that you'll be able to do this. I think somebody asked at the start of the show, is there a matrix explaining this somewhere what gets updated where? No, not that I've ever seen.
No, you can be the oracle in this story, and maybe someday you can explain it to everybody. Yeah. But this is a lot like the quarterly earnings announcements, right? We're going to compare this to something else. We've never explained what this other thing is, but they're a lot alike. Here's the difference. We've never explained what the other one is, right? So you don't even have a starting point to go with, right? You can't. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing something.
No, I mean, Feature Experience Pack, they've told us a little bit about it, and they listed a few small features that they had at the time it was introduced that were updating through that. I think there was like some touch typing things, and what else was in there? I can't remember now, but
Okay.
Not like Windows programs, not like Notepad or any of those things. They're not in that, right? But then there's a whole host of ways. I don't think so. Then you can update things like Notepad through the store now, but it's not part of the Feature Experience Pack. It's just like its own app updating separately through the store.
But the system page literally lists the level at which you're at for the Windows Feature Experience Pack. It literally has a version number associated with it.
Right, it does.
This thing suggests to me that we could see another number for this. Like, I don't know. I mean, look, we have different versions of Windows, right? So there's a Windows 10 version, whatever, and whatever, and whatever. And then Windows 11 versions, whatever. So we have these Windows Feature Experience Packs version, whatever, and whatever. And it's possible, and actually I believe is literal, that you could have the same Windows Feature Experience Pack version across different versions of Windows 10 and Windows 11, right? Yep. If anyone's confused, by the way, welcome.
We are too. Here's with Windows 10. Here's what was originally in the Feature Experience Pack. They had the snipping tool, the new snipping tool, Snip and Sketch, right? A text input panel, a shell suggestion user interface. That's it. That's what was in the first iteration of the Windows Experience Feature Pack. And
okay, so you could have basically across, we'll call it multiple versions of Windows 10 and or multiple versions of Windows 11. But maybe just keep it to Windows 10 so it doesn't get too screwed up. you could have the same versions of those things, even though your versions of Windows are different. I think that's the point of this. It's to get outside of you have to upgrade to a new version of Windows to get those things. Right?
I guess that's the point of it.
No one wants to say yes or no because it could be wrong.
Well, because no one has literally ever explained it exactly. Like, this is the thing. Like, it's not like, sorry, we have a Windows podcast. We actually don't know anything about Windows. No, I mean, it's never been explained. I think
the way they've treated it is, you don't need to worry your pretty little heads about this. Right?
Yep,
it's
lovely.
like, no one needs to know what's in this thing. It's just going to work. And don't worry about it. We don't want people like futzing over this. Like, I remember when I first saw Windows Feature Experience Pack show up on my Windows 10 machine, I'm like, what is this? And I asked Microsoft, I'm like, what's this thing that just installed on my PC? And they're like, no comment. I'm like, so wait, you just put something on my PC,
Windows.
but you won't tell me what it is.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
You put this terminology in Windows, and then when you ask about it, you tell me we don't need to worry about it.
Yeah.
Well, why is it in Windows?
I know. I feel like there are people who are, IT pros especially, who need to know what all these things are and what's in them and how they work, because they're handling PCs for multiple, hundreds, thousands of people. So they need to know.
Also, I'm just not fond of someone installing something and then me asking about it and them saying, we're not going to tell you what that is.
Exactly.
Yeah, you don't need to know. If you needed to know, we would tell you. See, if they were still making... anyway, so, okay.
Yeah. So I don't think we know a lot about Feature Experience Pack beyond that original thing I just said. Like, is there more stuff in it now? Maybe. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know if Raphael or anyone has done like a dump of features and said, what's in the Feature Experience Pack now? Or what does it look like on Windows 11 versus Windows 10?
There are so many initiatives at Microsoft that have occurred over the past, I'll call it 2 to 2 years, to remove or to separate features from specific Windows versions, right? So that they can be applied to multiple Windows. And that makes sense. It's what Project Reunion is, or the Windows App SDK now. It's a good idea. But it's weird that there are so many of them. Yeah. I think that's the thing that's a little confusing. It's not hard because Apple and Amazon, or Apple and Google do this with their mobile OSs, right? We need some way to rev things that are delivered as part of the system outside of you upgrading to a new version of that platform. It totally makes sense.
It does.
Why are there,
by the way,
5 of them, right?
Yeah. So you saw the thing with the PC Health Check app, right? So that now is going to just be installed automatically, I believe, on your Windows 10 machine, so that it can check if you can upgrade to Windows 11 and let you know when it's time. But it also is morphed into like this dashboard thing where it's also going to give you like helpful tips and tricks and blah. I'm like, wait a minute, what? You cannot install it, but it's another one of those things like, wait, how did this just suddenly get something that's going to be installed everywhere?
It's so much worse than what you just said, because the other thing I think people need to remember is that when Microsoft released this thing, the first version ever of it in June, which, by the way, was just 4 months ago, it was such a horrible piece of junk that they had to rev it quickly 3 times in a week. Right. And then they pulled it because it didn't work properly. But now it's just installed as part of Windows. This is the bar, right?
Yeah.
We used to spend like a year making sure stuff made sense and worked. And, over time, maybe that went down to 9 months or something. Now it's just like, it's great. We had some interns from the college. They've gone back to school, but we're going to ship this as part of Windows now.
See, here's something else that's really weird about, is your machine ready for Windows 11 if you're on 10? So I'm on my Surface Laptop 3. I have not sought Windows 11. I am not a seeker. But I got a message that popped up in Windows Update that says, hey, your machine is compatible with Windows 11. We already know that. And whenever it's ready for you, we'll let you know.
Wow.
But I know another guy. Wait till you hear this. Another guy running Surface Laptop 3. He said, I got that same message, but then I also got a pop-up in my taskbar. And when I hover over it, it says, I can now click this to upgrade to Windows 11. I'm like, wait, we're both running Surface Laptop 3 in the mainstream, not as testers, right? And we're both getting 2 different sets of messages about whether it's time to move to Windows 11.
Here's my theory. They've hired Terry Myerson as an outside consultant, and they were saying, hey, listen, how did you get people to upgrade to Windows 10 so quickly? And he said, well, we forced it on them.
Yeah. I'm happy to move when it's time, but I'm not going to move before it's time.
There's nothing quite like dangling a carrot in front of somebody and saying, hey, you can have this. No, you can't. Which is what that is, because I've seen the same thing. This computer completely meets all the requirements. You can't have it. Yeah. That's what it says. I mean, I'm cutting, I'm paraphrasing, but that's literally what that message says.
I know.
It's crazy.
So Kev Brewer in Discord says, have we gotten any more clarity from Microsoft about using 7th gen CPUs? Are security plus cumulative updates covered? I don't think we've gotten anything new, right? Or any additional guidance on that?
I think the clarity is there. They're not going to allow it, with the exception of those handful of specific chipsets, including the one in Surface Studio 2.
Yep.
And that's
you can at your own risk decide to install it, and they kept dangling that idea that maybe we won't give you security updates, but I've heard from people who said they got security updates. I've heard that they have.
That's right.
Them.
Yeah, that's something that happened Patch Tuesday over a week ago. Yeah.
So they're playing chicken. They're playing chicken with you, right? And the first round is they gave you the security updates.
Right. Logically, it doesn't make sense for Microsoft not to provide security updates to those computers. It just doesn't.
I know,
that said, you could go 1 month, 15 months, 30 months, one day. That's probably going to get cut off, and that's the scary bit, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right, we've got a lot more to talk about, but I do
we really
need to
do.
take
What's
a quick
going on
break.
here?
I'm not sure. It's there's a lot of information to get into. But let me tell you really quick about Udacity, who are bringing you this episode of Windows Weekly. You've heard about Udacity. Udacity offers you an online education program that is geared toward people looking to take their tech knowledge to the next level. Udacity has specialized and exciting content that can help take you further in the career you want, and they offer the latest cutting-edge nanodegree programs you won't find anywhere else. Udacity is here to encourage your career growth. In fact, they want to provide you with the information about the career you want, give you the skills for that career, and then help you get the job. They go all in. Don't let the pandemic stop you from improving your skills either. In fact, this is a great time to be doing it. One Udacity graduate had lost his job at a local Nigerian airline due to COVID-19. He decided to turn things around for himself and applied for the Machine Learning Scholarship Program from Microsoft Azure. Within just 6 months of receiving the scholarship, he transitioned into a career as a data analyst. You can check out one of Udacity's top 5 nanodegree programs. It's data engineering, product manager, data analyst, data scientist, and programming for data science with Python. If you're looking to get into the most cutting-edge technology careers, you can get nanodegree programs in AI, in flying car and autonomous flight engineer, intro to self-driving cars, machine learning engineer, and robotics software engineer, plus so much more. Udacity's courses are created with partners and industry leaders in Microsoft and Google and IBM and AWS and more. And the best part is they select team leads at top companies to be the instructors. I love that. That's one of the coolest things, is that these are people from these companies to be the instructors. You're going to get the right knowledge from the experts who are working in the field every day. When signing up for a nanodegree program with Udacity, you can expect courses to be project-based with active learning that lets you test your knowledge. You'll get homework and projects that will be reviewed by qualified professionals, real human feedback and reviews with access to mentors 24/7, and flexible schedules where you choose what works for you, whether it's 5 or 10 hours a week. It's at your own pace, and you can graduate in as little as 3 months. If your team needs to master cutting-edge technologies like data science, AI, and cybersecurity, well, check out Udacity for Enterprise, because it can upskill your entire workforce with real-world project-based learning. Check out the Enterprise section of Udacity's website today to learn more. Get the in-demand tech skills you need to advance your career. Visit udacity.com/twit and get 75% off any program with code TWIT75. This is a limited time offer. You really want to hop on this because I don't know how long they're going to be able to offer this huge discount. That's udacity.com/twit and enter TWIT75 for 75% off any program. Amazing deal. Thank you so much, Udacity, for sponsoring this week's episode of Windows Weekly. And let's get back to the show because we've got a lot more to cover here.
Where are we at?
I think we're still in Windows 11, including some rumors for a laptop and more.
Yep.
The AMD thing.
Yeah. Do you want to do the AMD thing first?
Yeah, it's quick. So we knew that when Windows 11 first shipped at the beginning of October, for some reason, I know why, because they only tested it for 4 months. It didn't. It offered some performance problems for people on AMD-based chipsets, and depending on the issue, it was a particular problem for gaming class PCs. So AMD and Microsoft have collectively fixed those problems. So AMD has a kind of a hotfix you can download manually from their website. And Microsoft has one that they're offering through Windows Update. So you'll get that one pretty much automatically. Between the two, they should fix the problems that AMD users were experiencing on Windows 11 when it first launched. So that's good news.
Yep.
All right, rumor mill.
Okay.
Heard it through the grapevine.
Yeah.
Mary
this
Jo,
is an
rumor
one.
Monger.
Yeah, this isn't my rumor. This is Zach Bowden at Windows Central's rumor, but it seems very believable to me.
Right.
Zach says he hears Microsoft is readying another new Surface laptop, but this one is going to be expressly for the education market, and specifically within that category, K through 12. 11.6 inches, running an Intel Celeron N4120. I have no idea what that is. Plastic exterior. Who's the target of this? Chromebooks, obviously, right? So Microsoft already offers a lot of Surface devices that they say are for the education market, but they all start at like $400, $500 without a keyboard and without a pen usually. So they're not really price competitive for that market. At one point, everybody thought there'd be a whole new category of PCs for education running Windows 10X, but then Microsoft dropped Windows 10X, and they say some of those features ended up in Windows 11. What Zach is hearing is very interesting because this name came up when we were looking at SKUs of Windows 11. Remember when everyone was seeing this thing called Windows 11 SE? And a lot of people thought that meant S-Mode edition or something like that. Well, he hears...
How about second edition, right? Remember Windows 98 SE?
Oh, goodness, no. No, he thinks SE might be student edition or school edition. And that these new laptops could run this kind of very locked down version of Windows 11 that's specific for the education market. Now, my part of contribution to this rumor is Microsoft just recently announced this Microsoft 365 A1 per device license that's going to go live November 1st. $38 per device. It covers it for 6 years. And everyone's like, what are these for, these licenses? They may be for this, right? Like maybe this plan is for these coming new laptops that Microsoft's going to announce.
Is there a pricing bit to this? Do we know anything about pricing?
He's saying, though, it will be very low cost. So, and that to me means like the $250, $300 some odd dollar category, like some of their OEMs have made in the past, those cheaper plastic ruggedized devices for schools.
They need them. I mean, Chromebooks sell, I think, for as little as $199 probably. I mean, they're really cheap.
They do. The other thing that Microsoft still needs, though, that we haven't heard about is better software for provisioning, wiping, and re-provisioning these devices if you're going to take them to schools, because that's why Chromebooks are popular, right?
I mean, Terry Myerson showed off a thing where you could walk around with a USB key. I don't understand why that isn't good enough.
Yeah. No, they need to solve that problem, because that's why people buy Chromebooks for schools, because they're really easy to set up, wipe, and kind of replace with the new software and services that you need. Zach thinks they could announce this anytime, like before the end of the year even. And he thinks there's even a chance it could be called something like Surface Laptop SE to reflect the version of Windows 11 that's in it.
Interesting.
I don't have any firsthand knowledge on any of that. I'm just repeating his rumor and adding in that.
Well, they need it.
The
I mean, they
Microsoft
need
365
this.
piece.
This has been a problem for 5 or more years, right?
Right. So they have Surface Go, Surface Laptop Go, but those aren't really what you need for this space. You need something really cheap that has a keyboard included, that's ruggedized and plastic. That's the device they don't have, right?
They're going to, this is such a huge problem because education is the future, right? The future market, these people coming up. And these days it's a lot of Chromebooks, it's a lot of Google services, Google Docs, et cetera. And, the future customer base is going to go into the workforce and they're going to expect the tools they're familiar with.
I'm curious how and if and when they announce this. It's a weird time to be announcing it in a way, right? Because halfway through the school year right now.
Well, the idea is you want to have it ready for the spring so it could be applicable to
for next year. Yeah.
The start of the next school year.
Yeah.
Well, when's the big, when's BET? That's January, isn't it?
January. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's probably the logical
That's a big
time
education show.
Yeah.
Yep. Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
I guess we'll see.
That's all the rumor I got for you. I don't have any more rumor beyond that.
As they said in the Discord, make them out. Kev Brewer said in the Discord, make them out of blue ocean plastic.
Well, make 20% of the outer shell out of blue or recycled ocean plastic.
Maybe they'll provide an external case that the students will be able to put on it, and those will be made out of 20%. Yeah. Oh man. All right, folks, you may have thought that this was just a Windows 11 podcast. Oh, wait, no, because you're all storied Windows users, so you know that Windows 10 is not going anywhere for a very long time, and that means we've got more to talk about with Windows 10. Tell me, what's the latest from Windows 10?
20 seconds of content.
Yes.
So Windows 10 is supported for 4 more years, I believe. I think it's the
4 more years.
4 more years, this month. And alongside Windows 11 in October is Windows 10 version 21H2, which actually might not ship until next month, but let's not worry about that. There is nothing major to report from a new feature perspective. Of course, this is what we'll call a cumulative update. I don't really see Microsoft changing Windows 10 too much, although the Microsoft Store from Windows 11 is going to make an appearance on Windows 10. And I think any of the app updates, honestly, the stuff that's serviced through the store, I don't see why they wouldn't just, it's simpler just to have the one version, right? So I think Windows 10 users will benefit from that stuff as well. But as far as core OS functionality, the underpinning stuff in Windows 11 that makes it better than Windows 10, I don't think they're going to get that. And certainly they're not getting it in Windows 10 21H2, I can tell you that. So there's not much going on there. But Microsoft is just announced late last week, probably, that they believe they finalized it. So I think it is what is it in the release preview phase? I think it is.
So it's available to all insiders in release preview now.
Yeah, there you go. So this is the final big step, big milestone before they just release it.
Yeah, I don't know if you caught this. So there were only going to be 4 new features in 21H2, and now there are only going to be 3.
Okay. Which one got cut out?
Windows Hello for Business deployment model, the thing they were calling Cloud Trust, that's going to be delivered as a future monthly update to 21H2. I guess it didn't make it in time. But they're calling this a November update, so I'm assuming it's going to come out next month, not
there you go.
Not in the last few days, right? Yeah.
Yep. Nothing big. Nothing.
Yeah, nothing much.
We're gonna, honestly, we're gonna ignore Windows 10 from now on. So let's just not worry.
Oh, really?
No, not really.
Okay, I was gonna say.
We'll see what happens.
All right. Anything else there?
Nope. That's pretty much it. Well, we talked about the dashboard thing, right?
Yeah, we did. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
We already got that.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to dev chat.
Yeah, I've completely screwed up the notes. I noticed I've done this to multiple stories somehow today. So Mary Jo, did you follow this .NET thing?
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about this?
So we're talking here about what's been going on lately with the .NET Foundation. Whoop, Sorachi. He didn't like that story. What's going on with the .NET Foundation and Microsoft including a feature in an open source version of .NET 6 and then pulling it and saying it was only going to be in Visual Studio 2022, the hot reload feature.
Right.
And now they've apologized and said, no, we're going back to doing what we said.
Yeah.
So I didn't even write this up because I'm like, okay, I should have probably. Microsoft did it. They screwed up. They apologized. They fixed it. The problem is anyone who's, and there's still a large group of these people, anyone who still believes Microsoft is in the open source world in order to do like a Trojan horse kind of play, like they're going to suddenly one day spring upon everyone and like screw everything up for Linux and all open source stuff that's in the .NET Foundation. They jumped on this, right? And they're like, this proves Microsoft does not have our best intentions at heart and blah, blah, blah. The one thing I'll say about this whole controversy is I think if the community had not called Microsoft on it, they would have tried to get away with this. And it's good they backtracked.
But what were they getting
They were
away
trying
with
to make a
exactly?
feature that had been added to the open source version, something that paying customers of Visual Studio only would get.
So, okay. So here's the thing.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
This is much ado about nothing, in my opinion. If you're a developer and you're creating an app, and it could be an app that runs on a local computer, it could be an app that is a mobile app that runs on a connected device or on an emulator. Hot reload is a huge convenience. There's no doubt about it, right? Imagine you compile, you link, you execute the code, and the app comes up wherever it comes up, and you're like, oh, look, there's a spelling mistake. In the old days, and by the old days, I mean like 6 weeks ago, you would stop the app, you'd go back into your developer environment, you'd fix the mistake, you would recompile it, you would relink it, you'd re-execute the app, it would come up, and then you'd keep going. Hot reload lets you make those fixes in real time without having to stop the app and restart it. It saves a lot of time. It's every major development environment on Earth supports this feature. With the .NET 6, it's becoming like a platform feature, for lack of a better term. But honestly, that's not a great term because it has to be implemented in every UI that you're using, right? So Visual Studio is a paid environment. It's a graphical environment. There's Visual Studio Code. But the thing they had promised was that it would be part of the .NET command line tools, which are open source. .NET 6 is open source.
Right.
And so the 0.01% of .NET 6 developers that will exist a year from now could not access hot reload, and this caused like a huge stink. And honestly, they didn't say this exactly, but what they did say was it wasn't ready, right? The point of this wasn't to screw open source people. It was to deliver something of high quality. And my understanding was they would just keep working on this, and maybe in .NET 7 it would appear for the command line. The vast majority of people who are going to target .NET in any capacity, and certainly .NET 6, are going to do so through Visual Studio. It wasn't to screw over open source. Specifically. I don't see it that way. I mean, obviously the conspiracy guys will see it differently, but
I think it came at a bad time. There's been a lot of issues lately with the .NET Foundation. The executive director ended up resigning, and they are getting someone new in there. And there's been some controversy around Microsoft employees and how much will and kind of priority they get in doing things like pull requests and in different code branches for .NET.
Yeah, I was reading about all of this stuff.
Yeah.
What brought me onto it was Scott Hanselman I follow on Twitter, and I'd seen just a tweet that said working on it. And so immediately I'm like, what's he working on? I looked into that and then saw what the whole story was. And I mean, what Mary Jo is saying there, I think is the interesting thing is that there's the kerfuffle, the argument, the back and forth is about a lot more than just this one feature, more about Microsoft's role in this open source community that it was supposed to be separate from, that it's playing kind of a big role in. There have been lots of several resignations that have happened and back and forth there. So I can see how this, I think, Paul, what you're kind of touching on there is this is almost straw that broke the camel's back. And it was not even a full piece of straw. It was this tiny little strip of straw.
There are two problems here. Mary Jo brought up the first one. The first one is that there's this giant, despite the fact that Microsoft is probably the biggest contributed open source in the world right now, and they have successfully shepherded GitHub and made it this beautiful thing that will be everlasting and whatever. They've been very trustworthy. How many open source developers are using .NET? It's crazy. Yeah. Like the speed at which they turned on Microsoft, I think, is indicative of the fear and distrust that this community has had in Microsoft from the beginning. And by the way, 20 years ago, it totally made sense. But how many years have to go by? How many things do they have to do right before you get over this? How many years have to go by since World War II happened that we stopped distrusting Germany? No, I mean, seriously, it's crazy. Yeah. That's one part of it. That's definitely one part of it. But I just, this impacts nobody, like not nobody literally, but a really small percentage of people. And I look, and now Microsoft said, look, we're sorry. Okay, cool. Good on them. Yeah. We are going to, we'll just put it back, and you can have the piece of junk that we didn't think was good enough to ship in .NET 6. We live in a world where Microsoft announced Windows 11 in June and promised Android app support, and it's not coming till next year. We live in a world where Apple announced in June a bunch of features for Mac OS Monterey, one of which is called SharePlay, which they are not delivering until later. That's how everything is done. That's the world we live in. This feature is part of that world. It's something they worked on. It wasn't ready. They said, we're not delivering something that doesn't work this well. And look, they didn't say this. I'm projecting a little bit. My expectation was that this thing would have arrived later in the future. That's all. And it not being available from the command line tools in .NET, are you kidding me? Who cares? But you know what? It doesn't matter who cares, because you got it. So if you cared, congratulations. Bullying wins. You win. You got it. So congratulations.
You know, I feel like you're right that like how much time has to go by before they trust them. But you know what? There's a group of people, they will never trust them. And one tiny slip up is all they need to say.
Oh my God, they've been waiting. It's like they've been waiting. See, this proves it. Guys, it's been 15 years. Yeah. This is the only thing that's ever happened. Yeah. Does this show evilness and malicious intent?
Yeah. Yeah, okay. I think it's it came at an unfortunate time when there's been a lot of different controversy happening within .NET Foundation, and you know, Microsoft's role in that foundation, kind of coming into question. Like they said they were turning it over to the open source community, but they're still trying to control it. So I hope now, you know, that things are going to quiet down. Executive leadership is going to change. Not that I don't think Claire Novoti did anything that was terrible. I think she also apologized when she did something with the pull request that was wrong. And
well, by the way, the one mistake they made, they did, unfortunately, what they should have done is, if you think about how this functionality is compiled, for lack of a better term, they could have just skipped over this part of it to create .NET 6. Instead, what they did was they deleted the source code base for this thing so that it just wasn't ever going to be included. And I think that sent the scary message, like, see, you know, they did all this work and then they got rid of it. And that in the open source world, again, especially for the extreme types, is the unforgivable part. You don't destroy source code, right? You don't get delete source code. But honestly, I look at this as they announced something in May. A lot of it was ready and some of it wasn't. And they said, look, we're going to deliver this subset of it. And by the way, in typical Microsoft form, if Microsoft did anything wrong, they did other things wrong, I'm sure. But the big thing for me is the thing we always complain about: communication. If you look at that blog post, it's 3,000 words long. And 2,800 words in, casually in the middle of a paragraph, they're like, oh, we're not going to deliver this thing. Like the way they communicated, it was terrible. They should have come clean in a more translucent fashion, for sure.
Yeah. I think it's going to be good to kind of put everybody on guard a little bit, and everybody kind of making sure that going forward, everything is dotting all the I's, crossing all the T's. The reaction was so strong. You would have thought Microsoft said, you know what? It was.
We just spent 3 years making .NET totally open source. we're not doing that anymore. We're going back proprietary.
Roll it all back.
You would have thought they just reversed everything. And it's like, guys, come on. Visual Studio Code has got to be the most popular IDE, for lack of a better term, in the world. And that includes people running Linux, developing purely open source software. So it has to be, right? How much do they have to do? How much do they have to give? Crazy. Yeah. Anyway, I thought it's too bad. It's just too bad. Yeah. This is they're never going to trust Microsoft. And that bothers me.
Yeah.
Because I feel like Microsoft has done a lot to earn their trust. That's all.
All right. Up next, we'll take a little breather here. Up next, this is an interesting one for folks who maybe wanted to get access to some photo manipulation tools and don't want to download gigantic programs. Adobe Max is going on right now, and there was an announcement that was made that Paul, you covered.
There were approximately 1,100 announcements that were made, but among them, right?
Very true.
Because they've updated all of their core tools. I'm not a big Adobe guy, so I couldn't possibly run through all of this stuff. But the Photoshop stuff is kind of interesting. Photoshop now is has always been a flagship product for Adobe, but today when they talk about Photoshop is something that runs on desktop, which means Windows and Mac. Also runs on iPad, and it's been fascinating to watch how quickly that thing has evolved on iPad. But of course, what about the rest of the world? And what about those people who don't want to install this gigantic application, but they're part of a workflow in a workplace where they have to review assets and look at things and maybe make small edits or add comments and so forth. And so Adobe is working to bring, by the way, most of its CC suite, if you will, to the web, starting with Photoshop. Again, its flagship product, and that makes tons of sense. And of course, they're going to make it part of the subscription. Like, this is not something you can, get cheaply or easily, and it's certainly not ready yet. But it is coming to the web. And I think we talked last week about PWAs, and I know people doubt that this is the future and everything, but Adobe has looked at the web and has determined that this is kind of the future for the platform. And they're starting with their biggest product. So it's available in beta now. It will improve dramatically over time. It has basic editing features. It has some of that commenting stuff. It's not the full Adobe Photoshop experience, but I have no doubt it's going to get there. So it's just fascinating to me that they're making such a big push in that direction, especially given the engineering resources to bring Photoshop to the iPad in a meaningful way, right? Not a kind of a joke light version of Photoshop, but an actual kind of over time full-featured version, to do that for the web as well, and then to have plans to basically move their entire product line to the web. I just think this is like the electric car version of software. It's like we've decided this is the future and this is the direction we're going, and I think it's really interesting.
I agree. I think Photoshop on the web is fantastic. There are times whenever I, might not be at my own personal computer, at work or something, and need to hop on and be able to use Photoshop, or just simplifying some of the things. And then also, if this gets users more access to some of these Adobe Sensei features that you are seeing more, I think this is fantastic. Just more options for people to use these tools on whatever devices they're using. Is great.
I agree.
All right. I think we know what time it is. Mary Jo, you can have your beverage.
Well, make it quick, Mary Jo. It's not a lot.
Good, because it's a very
Xbox
quick
Corner.
segment.
It is a quick segment. There's really not much going on there, which is great. It was just fine. It's interesting. They have like an October update for I have completely screwed up all the links to the story. These notes. This just tells you where my head's at this week. Microsoft has shipped the October update for Xbox, which in this case actually just means Xbox Series X, S, and I believe One. This is basically dashboard update stuff, right? So they don't actually necessarily deliver a big update like this every single month, but they often have these kind of monthly updates. And there's stuff going on here. There's a neat night mode thing and a blue light filter, which is fantastic. Quick settings, that they've added to the Xbox guide. But the big one is that feature we heard about earlier, probably last month or the month before, where if you have an Xbox Series X, the dashboard, the guide, basically the UI, all the UI stuff will actually be 4K if you have a 4K set, right? Which is like one of those things you hear and you're like, wait, what was it before? Like, what are you talking about?
Exactly.
Why wouldn't it be 4K? It was actually 1080p. And so if you had a 4K set or a 1440p set, it would just upscale it. So you have to go and enable this in settings. They won't do it for you automatically. It is dramatically crisper. It's one of those things I sort of just looked at and I thought, well, this is like, whatever. I'm not going to notice anything. Oh yeah. You notice if you have a 4K set, big difference. It's actually really nice. In fact, once you see it, you wonder anew, why wasn't this just the thing? Why this wasn't a thing from day one, but it's there now. So it took a year, but here we are. So they finally did it. So that's great.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's cool. The other big thing, of course, Halo Infinite is coming out soon, early December. But a year ago, I want to say it was a year ago, August, I think. And this was before we knew they were going to delay Halo Infinite. I actually showed up with Leo to do live coverage of a Microsoft event where they unveiled, among other things, the first peek at the Halo Infinite campaign, right? The single player experience. And it was terrible. It was so terrible. The way I described it was, it started off terrible. And I thought, oh, that's cool. I see what they're doing. They're showing what Halo used to look like. And they're going to do that Wizard of Oz thing where all of a sudden it goes from black and white to color. And it's going to be 4K, HDR, 60 frames, 120 frames a second, whatever. And it never happened. It kept going. And I'm like, what is happening here? This looks like Halo 3 from like 12 years ago. And anyway, it wasn't maybe coincidental that shortly after that event, they delayed the thing for a year. And they took a lot more time to fix it. So this past week, I guess just a couple of days ago, they released a new 6-minute preview of the Halo Infinite campaign. It has all the same characters we saw over a year ago. A lot of the same kind of areas and, the type of outdoor Halo type stuff. It is gorgeous. It is awesome. It's awesome. It is exactly what you thought this thing was going to look like. I have no idea what they thought they were going to ship last year, but this year it's a big change. So if you haven't done it, definitely go look this up on YouTube or wherever. If you care about Halo at all, you hear that, first of all, the Halo theme music, the music you hear in the background is the audio version of like comfort food. If you're a video game fan, you hear it, and you immediately go back to the initial Halo campaign from like 20 years ago. Except that now it looks awesome. It's awesome. And so this is a big, big change because, man, a year ago, I was like, oh, what have they done? Is this for the Nintendo Switch or is this for a 4K console? So now it looks great. So Halo is in good shape. So if you were worried about Halo, I think everything's looking good. So big change.
Good. I'm glad it's not how you first saw it in that garbage form.
The whole time you're like, okay, it's gonna get better, right?
Please get better.
Did, and it was like, what is happening?
All right. Well, the back of the book is up next, but we will take one more break so I can tell you about Bandwidth, who are bringing you this episode of Windows Weekly. Bandwidth provides accurate 911 caller information for Microsoft Teams users and maintains compliance with complicated E911 regulations during your migration. You do that all with Bandwidth Duet for Teams. Moving to Microsoft Teams can be complicated, but Bandwidth's Duet for Microsoft Teams empowers you to simplify your move with software-driven SIP, dynamic E911 capabilities, and industry-leading expertise. You can solve the E911 challenge for modern enterprises. Under the federal regulation named the Ray-Baums Act, enterprises are required to provide a dispatchable location, which includes not only the street address, but more granular information, including building, floor, or room number. Of course, the problem is that employees with soft phones are often moving freely between campuses, buildings, and remote offices to work and collaborate, so providing accurate location to public safety is challenging. Enter Duet for Microsoft Teams, where Bandwidth leverages its advanced dynamic E911 for Teams solution to identify the location of a Teams-connected user at the time of the emergency call. You can simplify direct routing migrations as well. If your organization is considering direct routing, Bandwidth's Duet for Microsoft Teams gives you greater control and value by helping you decouple your telephony from Teams. You get the advantages of working directly with a cloud-native carrier, including failover control, call forwarding, and real-time reroutes, all on the Microsoft Teams platform. And with Bandwidth's Duet for Teams, you save 40% compared to Microsoft calling plans. Rely on unlimited 933 testing capabilities, so you can easily verify that your location information meets compliance standards without actually burdening public safety with live 911 calls. You'll have a migration partner, not just a provider. That means you're going to get dedicated onboarding specialists to help execute your project plan, a 24/7 NOC and expert support teams who will accelerate your migration and be with you every step of the way. Everyone says they've got great support, but Bandwidth proves it by just being easier to work with. Zoom, Genesis, and RingCentral all use Bandwidth. Bandwidth's white glove customer support touts a 9.8 customer satisfaction rating and is uniquely positioned to help your enterprise migrate with less frustration and to meet regulatory expectations. More than just a Teams shop? Well, no problem, because Bandwidth can help simplify your telecom migration to the cloud with a bring your own carrier solution for RingCentral 2, in addition to Microsoft Teams. Check out Bandwidth's Duet for Teams and Duet for RingCentral to see how you can orchestrate your move to the cloud with flexibility and control. Request your proof of concept at bandwidth.com/WW. That's bandwidth.com/WW for Windows Weekly. Thanks so much to Bandwidth for sponsoring this week's episode of Windows Weekly. And let's head to the back of the book with a tip of the week.
Hey. So how do we even broach this topic? I don't want to take up 30 minutes here, but I don't know if you guys were following the news last year, but we had a little bit of a pandemic, and yeah, it happened. And, but we solved it. The United States beat COVID. We're doing great. So everything's fine. But one of the, that's what they tell me. So one of the things that came out of this, of course, was we didn't get to go anywhere. So I typically spend about a month each year outside of the country. And last year was a little bit of a smack to the face. I don't know what to call it. It was kind of tough. So one of the things I was looking forward to this year, when we beat COVID, was traveling again. And I've actually traveled a bunch this year. In fact, once we get back from this trip, I basically have been outside of the country for a year this year, which is unbelievable. That's amazing. But because of the way things haven't gone all that great, actually, most of my travel in the middle of the year in the summer was to Mexico, which is, technically international. But one of the neat things about Mexico is that they're on the same electrical system. So you don't have to bring adapters for anything, right? So you bring your computer and your phones and whatever else you bring, and you plug it in. It just works. It's nice. It's like travel light. It's nice. And this week, as we discussed earlier, I'm in Paris, and I like to think of myself as sort of a savvy international traveler type guy, And we we flew here, and we drove to the airport. We were almost at the airport, and all of a sudden I said something out loud. It's like, what's going on? I didn't pack any travel adapters. This is like an incredible boneheaded mistake to make. And I was like, well, okay, they sell them at the airport. We'll get some at the airport. It's fine. I have 20 to 30 of these in a bag at home. I just didn't bring even one. And I asked my wife not to tell our kids this because I will never hear the end of it. But we got to the airport. It just so happened that the entrance for our gate area was no one in security, and we just blew right through. And we got inside security, and there was one store, and they had one adapter, and it was for the UK, not for Europe. And I didn't want to go out of security, and I was like, okay, it's okay. When we arrive at the airport in France, they will have the adapters in the airport. We'll get them at the airport. We flew overnight. I slept like a jerk, like I always do, barely at all. I arrived, bleary-eyed and blah, 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 whatever. And we blew through customs, no line, no nothing. We got right through. It was the most wonderful thing in the world. And we got in the cab and we left, and we're heading to the airport, the hotel. And I'm like, we forgot to get the adapters. And here's the thing. I guess what I'm trying to say is, other than how fallible I am, as we all start doing these things again that we used to do a lot and we were really good at, it is perhaps helpful to remember that we forgot how to do things. You know what I mean? Like part of being good at things is doing them again and again and again. And when you don't do them again and again for a long time, you forget. And what a basic, dumb, stupid, whatever. So this hotel is interesting. I don't know if you guys have ever seen such a thing, but there is one power plug in this room that is universal. I can actually plug anything into it. I can plug it. My laptop is plugged into it right now. I have never seen this. So when I went to the front desk, I asked about this, and they said, "Oh, you're all set. We have a plug in the room. It does everything." And I didn't believe this could possibly be true. It is true, but it's here where I'm sitting at the desk, and behind me at the bed where I want to plug in my laptop, my iPad, my phone, are just European adapters. And, I don't know what it is where Europeans, they only have their own adapters. But I had to go to a local store and buy an adapter, which I'm going to throw in the trash when we leave, because honestly, it's like this gigantic thing that I would never travel with. I have a lot of these things. Normally when I travel, I used to, I travel with my kids like for 15 years. I'd be like, here's a big European adapter and a small European adapter, and you get one of these and one of these, and you get one, And
right.
I came here with nothing. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, don't be stupid like I am. So.
Tip of the week, don't be stupid. No, I see what you're saying, though. I think we overestimate how much of what we do is muscle memory. And so we think that, X, Y, and Z are all muscle memory, but it turns out that some of those things, it really is about repeating that process over and over again to keep it.
I flew here with 3 phones, and the other funny thing is we have USB cable, right? So we don't have adapters, so we can't plug our stuff into anything. So I bring a travel power like extension cable, and it has a bunch of plugs on it. It's really helpful. It has USB plugs, but they're all USB-A plugs, and there are USB-A plugs in this hotel. There's 2 here, there's 2 behind me on that side of the bed, there's 2 over there. I do not have a single USB-A cable to my name. I traveled here with at least 5 USB-C cables that are C to C. I don't have a single C to A. I don't have one. I don't even have one. So there are 6 power ports in this room I cannot use because I don't have the right cable. Yeah.
They're all just staring at you, mocking you.
Yeah, mocking me. Yes. Exactly. That's exactly it. Anyway, if you're going to travel again, internationally especially, learn from my mistake. That's all. It's like I've never done it before. Beautiful. Okay. Anyway, let's move on. So, Pick. This is not a big deal. Stardock, of course, makes Start 11, which I think is a big deal for people who have moved on to Windows 11 because the Start menu, especially, but not just the Start menu, the desktop and the taskbar are so lacking compared to what was available in Windows 10. They're bringing all this stuff back. So $4.99, it's a great deal. Stardock, of course, makes a bunch of other utilities. And one of the things they just updated is Fences to version 4. It's still in beta, so it's, moving down the path. But the big thing with Fences 4 is they've added support for Windows 11, right? So Fences, for those unfamiliar, is a utility so you can organize things on your desktop. This is interesting to me because I actually use my desktop. I don't know if a lot of people do this, but I use my desktop for managing files that I'm working on at the time. That's kind of my working set. And so I do like a Windows key plus D, get down to the desktop. I've got the stuff I need to work on. And Fences is neat because it provides these logical areas on the desktop. You can hide them. You can minimize the view and so forth, and just kind of keep everything there. And the big thing in Fences 4 is something that, frankly, I'm surprised anyone could live without, but roaming profiles. And the idea there is that you have multiple computers and the same things will be stored in the same fences on this, across your desktops, across all your computers, which is awesome. Supports virtual desktops. It has better search, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, it's available for Windows 11 as well. So if you haven't checked that out, please do. And then don't forget your international adapters, because seriously, what the heck is wrong with me? It's the craziest. I can't even, it's crazy.
Oh, Paul, you're on vacation. You gotta forgive yourself.
Never gonna live it. I can't. There is no word for how dumb I feel about this.
And you decided to share it with the world.
Exactly. I don't need them. I have over 20 of them back home. European, it's two side. There's the 3 and the 2 pry. I have them all. I have everything. They're all, but they're in They're in Pennsylvania.
I have that one giant honking round thing that is an adapter for all different countries all over the world.
Right.
It's heavy, but it works.
Well, we'll let Paul stew while we talk about the enterprise pick of the week.
Yes. Enterprise Pick is a company that Microsoft just bought last week called Clear Software. So the reason I made this the Enterprise Pick is what Clear Software does is they improve connectivity using APIs between backend systems and specifically Oracle and SAP to other platforms. So Microsoft's idea in buying them for some unknown amount of money, we don't know anything about the terms of the deal, is that they would be able to integrate the Power Platform low-code, no-code tools more easily and directly with backend systems, especially SAP and Oracle. If they had this software. So they bought the company. They said they're going to be integrating it with Power Apps and Power Automate so that people who are using those tools to build apps and do automations will just be able to do this much more seamlessly with backend systems from SAP and Oracle. The kind of overriding message of all this is Microsoft cares a lot about growing the market share for Power Platform, and they want to make it so Power Platform is not just the platform for integrating your own custom apps to Microsoft apps, but also to other companies' apps. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see what they do with this, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them buy more companies like this who do connectivity between other backend systems that they could incorporate with Power Platform.
Cool.
Yeah,
I think Power Platform is really cool. So anything dealing with that is fascinating to me.
Yeah, for sure.
I like that stuff.
Yeah.
All right, tell us. We had a rumor earlier, and now it's time for a code name.
Yes. So the code name of the week is Project Xerix. Zerix. Xerix has to do with Microsoft doing more work around sustainability and making things more environmentally friendly and supportive. It's a research project, and Microsoft says it is going to incorporate advances in biotech, chemistry, material science, and computer science so that they can develop more environmentally sustainable materials for the IT industry. So their first focus areas with Project Xerix are making sustainable printed circuit boards. That's kind of cool. Looking at new materials to make those out of. They're doing work around biodegradable plastics and also bioconcrete building materials. What is that? That is Microsoft saying, right now we build data centers out of concrete and other non-sustainable, non-zero carbon footprint materials. What if we could build them out of things like mushrooms? Not kidding. They actually said that today. What if we could build them out of all kinds of new fibers and materials that are much more friendly, biodegradable, sustainable? I think it's interesting that they're doing a lot of research around this. If you didn't see it today, Microsoft did a whole bunch of announcements around updates on how they're trying to reduce their own carbon footprint. They've made some very big commitments about being carbon neutral and carbon negative in the coming years. But what I find most interesting in all of that is near-term things they're doing in building out data centers, because you know what? They build 50 to 100 new data centers a year right now. And they're not just saying, okay, we'll get to that later. Right now, we're just going to keep doing it the old way, build it out of non-sustainable materials, use a lot of water for cooling, use a lot of electricity. No, all these new ones they're building are using all these kind of up-to-date, weird, cool new materials and new ideas around how to recycle servers and do things like that. So if you haven't seen Project Xerix, just you can Bing it and find more information. If you haven't seen the stuff about the carbon footprint updates that Microsoft did today. I wrote about it on my site, and there's some links that you can check out more in terms of where they're going, what they're doing in the near term with their own data centers, and what they're doing for customers as well with things like the Microsoft Clouds for sustainability, which is a set of tools that you can use in your own data centers to see where you've got problems with power, cooling, et cetera, and if you want to correct that and make it more sustainable.
Very, very cool. I like the idea of these like mushrooms. Who knew?
Yeah, I know. I'm like, mushrooms?
It sounds illegal.
It does. Depends on the kind of mushrooms, I guess. Yes.
Yeah. All right, let's round things out. We've had a few morel mushrooms and want to pair it with a cider this week for the pick of the week.
Yep. I've been doing a lot of pumpkin beer and seasonal beer picks. So right before Halloween, why not a cider pick? Because that's another good seasonal drink. Citizen Cider, Burlington, Vermont, makes a lot of really interesting and unusual ciders. They've got one called Wits Cider. And the way they describe it is it's a classic cider maker's cider. They say it starts like an ale and finishes like a dry craft cider. So if you've ever had really dry, what they call craft ciders, not just like that really overly sweet kind of cider that many people think of when you hear the word cider. Dry ciders are more like European ciders. They're really, like the finish of them is super dry, but that makes them really easy to pair with food. This is only 6.5%. As I say in my notes, maybe it would be good with candy corn. Who knows? I think it would be a nice pairing. You need something dry when you're eating a lot of candy corn around this time of year.
I was going to say, go ahead.
Available in cans. So I bet you guys could even maybe find it in California if you wanted to try it. Yeah, it's called Wits, WIT''S cider from Citizen Cider.
The thing about ciders that always bugged me was I don't like anything that's sweet. And so a cider, in my head was always something that was just, even the kinds that are supposed to be less sweet, they're still, so something that's very dry would be nice.
So I love apple cider, but I water it down.
Yeah.
Because it's, I completely understand that. Yeah.
Yeah. This one, if you read the comments like on Untapped, people are saying, okay, this is actually a cider I could drink more than one of because it does taste dry. It doesn't taste all cloyingly sweet at the end.
I might have to look this up, see if they do have it locally because, I might find a new love for cider because I tend to avoid it.
Yes.
All right. Well, folks, we have reached the end of this episode of Windows Weekly. We didn't have a sweetbreads of the week pick or anything.
We did not.
No, sadly, no. We didn't bring out the French menu for you.
That's okay.
We left that behind. That joke about sweetmeats comes from Paris' own Paul Thurrott of Thurrott.com. Paul, thank you.
Thank you.
And joining us, not from Paris, but from Srirachi's home somewhere in New York, it's Mary Jo Foley of allaboutmicrosoft.com. Thank you, Mary Jo.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for being on with us again.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I appreciated joining you. And I think I'll be back next Wednesday as well for Windows Weekly.
I think so too. Yeah, because I think Leo comes home that day, right?
Yeah, I think so. So he'll be recovering from the trip and we'll be back.
It'll be all Ignite all the time next week. So lots of enterprise, Micah. I know you cannot wait. Mary Jo, your passion about enterprise is what makes that an enjoyable thing to listen to.
It's not confusing. It's energizing.
It's energizing. There you go. I'm looking forward to the learnings.
Yes, you have been paying attention. We appreciate it.
Watch out. He's going to say tech intensity in a second. Here it comes.
It could come, yeah. All right. Thank you both very much, and I'll see you next week.
Have you ever read a tech news story and thought to yourself, man, I would love to talk to the person who wrote this to find out more information? Well, that's exactly what Micah Sargent and I, Jason Howell, do each and every week on Tech News Weekly. We read the stories that matter to us, we reach out to the people making a break in the tech news, and we invite them on to tell their story. And you can find it at twit.tv. Look for Tech News Weekly every Thursday.